A question people often ask me is how I come up with my ideas. It's a decent question and has a pretty simple answer. I just experiment with lots and lots of stuff, always trying to unearth the underlying mechanics behind things in the game. Take the campfire. You don't look at it as a campfire, but break it down to its constituent parts. It inflicts damage, it can hold 4 items, its hitbox is an unusual 7 pixels in height, water splash potions put it out, and this can cause a block update, etc, etc, etc. How many of these turn out useful? Not many. 9 times out of 10, these are either useless, don't lead anywhere, or are missing something. Nevertheless, I memorise everything I can and shelf what I find. I have a big old database in my brain of near pointless Minecraft trivia. But this game is ever evolving, there's always new discoveries and updates. These at one time useless game mechanics can thus spontaneously become extremely useful when something new shows up. I mention all this because this video is an example of that very phenomenon in action. It's something I wanted to do all the way back in 2012. Yeah, I've been making videos for quite a while, but it never worked properly. Today, it's time to take that idea off the shelf and explore something really quite fun. So subscribe if you like what you see, I'm Simply Sark, and let's look into the wacky world of interdimensional redstone. Now, interdimensional redstone has everything to do with chunk loading, which I've spoken a lot about in the past. To simplify things, when it comes to chunk loaders, there's 2 types of a loaded chunk. A lazy chunk and an entity processing chunk. Lazy chunks are sort of soft loaded and tend to be able to process stuff like redstone and block activity. Entity processing chunks are a bit beefier and, as the name implies, can process mobs, items, and entity activity. Portals, as finicky as they tend to be, have always been able to load chunks, but not very well or consistently, especially on the entity side of things. If I recall, portal use only activates chunks on the other side for a few game ticks, not very useful at all. This was until a couple weeks back. A very small tweak was made that changes everything. Now, when an entity travels through a portal, chunks on the other side will be loaded for 15 seconds, but these are 15 very stable, consistent seconds. This seemingly innocuous change puts some extremely cool, theoretical ideas on the table, but we gotta prove it works first. As great as chunk loaders can be, they'll probably never be able to replicate a player loading chunks. So we have to figure out what this can and cannot do. What are its limits? The catch is, how do you observe the unobservable? To be able to know what's going on, you need to take a peek into the nether, but you can't because that would invalidate everything. In fairness, this would be pretty tricky to troubleshoot in survival mode, so we'll need some creative tools to start diagnosing. This all feels a bit like astronomy, staring wildly into the unknown with little to go by. To start things off, we'll try something pretty basic. Does redstone work? To determine if our tests are successful or not, we'll be using a few command blocks to confirm if what we wanted to happen, happened. So I was pretty confident with redstone, and no surprise, it works fine. This also extends to other redstone events, such as piston movement and item transfer. Next up is items. These are entities, and it's integral that they function properly. If they don't, there's no interface, and interdimensional redstone remains but a dream. Previously, the items got loaded for a few fractions of a second, then they were almost instantly unloaded and unreachable. To confirm that the item is in fact reachable, we'll place a pressure plate a few blocks away from the portal. In order for the item to activate it, it needs to be able to process its velocity and maintain it for more than a few ticks. Before, the item would just freeze up in midair. Tried it out, and it worked. The item was not only able to process movement, but it also maintained its loadedness for the advertised 15 seconds. Next, something more ambitious. Does natural plant growth work? I'm pretty skeptical of this because even spawn chunks don't seem to process this activity, but it's worth a shot. We'll place down some grass and a trigger which activates if dirt converts to a grass block. To speed things up, we'll increase random tick speed, which we can see is active here. Unsurprisingly, this doesn't work. My theory was perhaps the game doesn't bother loading light, which would interfere with most plant growth, but I tried with cactus, which doesn't care about light, yet it still failed to grow. This remains true with something like saplings, though interestingly, bone meal does function and can grow trees interdimensionally. Explosions work properly, but I was curious if Mob AI did. Placed a villager with a zombie and put it to test. This would prove a few things. Mobs can move, mobs can process damage, and their AI is intact. Strangely, this totally works. The villager was chased, bitten, and converted without me being in the same dimension. At this point, I was satisfied that the fundamentals were there and this could be used in practice. So, what can we do with it? When you go through a portal, you end up on the other side. Easy enough to understand, but what if you could pick your destination before you left? Well, now you can. Let's say you have a few different places you like to go in the overworld. They're all about 1,000 blocks away from your starter portal. Here's how the setup might work. You place some dispensers in front of your overworld portal. Each contain a different item that corresponds with where you want to end up. When you're ready to leave, you just walk into the portal as normal, onto the appropriate lane of your choosing. The item gets shot through to the Nether before you. And while you're waiting, there's some stuff going on behind the scenes. In the Nether, the item is picked up and identified. The portal from whence it came is smashed to pieces, and a signal is then sent to the corresponding portal and ignited. Now, when the player finally warps, the game will realise that the original portal has vanished and must look for an alternative. It finds the newly lit portal and takes the player there instead. The player can then walk back through this portal to find that they have travelled to their initial destination far quicker than anticipated. This, of course, can work for any of the destinations. Cloud computing. You've probably heard of it by now, but it's quite a novel idea. Cloud computing has a big benefit where you don't have to own a powerful, bulky computer or server. You send a little bit of information with a task, it ends up at a massive data center that can process and compute something mathematically quite complex. It then sends the result back and your task is complete. You don't have to cram 1,000 computers into your downstairs loop. A similar idea can be applied with interdimensional redstone. You've surely encountered this problem at some point before. You haven't got any space. Perhaps you've built somewhere or in some way that leaves you zero room to add any redstone devices. If you live in a narrow tower, or under the sea, or on an island, or on a skyland, you've basically got nowhere to put anything. Take a super smelter. These are really useful to have, but they have a tendency to be massive space hogs. This is when you can use interdimensional redstone to your advantage. You can delegate the task to the Nether. Lob in your ores and they'll be processed over there, then sent back once they're done. It's kind of like having a secret pocket dimension to throw all your bulky junk into. If you're really fussy, you might not want your Nether to be messy either. In this case, there's a great solution. The roof. You could actually store all your bulky machines up there instead. Now, portals don't travel to the Nether ceiling, so you'll need some pipes or buses, but a portal from the Nether ceiling will happily take you to the overworld as normal. Best of both worlds. No bulky devices in the overworld, no bulky devices in the Nether hub. Everyone wins. Chested minecarts were originally introduced to assist you with mining. Once your inventory was full, just throw the items into the cart and off it goes. In practice, this doesn't work that well because you have to keep laying down the track and maybe you're mining chaotically or spelunking. It's just kind of not really worth the effort. With interdimensional redstone, we have a much more convenient solution. So you have your base, and deep below the mantle, there's you, digging, mining and scraping up all the resources you can get your grubby little hands on. You're jumping into new cave system after cave system, and your inventory is getting a little clogged. It's not a problem though, because you can send them back home. At your base, you have a portal, and it's perfectly lined up with a counterpart in the Nether. You, roaming around, are still within 128 blocks horizontally of your base. You quickly plop down a portal, and lob the items in. Because you're in range, these items are going to end up in that earlier Nether portal. As soon as they're there, we're going to redirect them straight back from where they came. But they're not going to return to us, they're going to return to our base. And that's because that perfectly synced up portal will always opt for the closest in the overworld. And that's not the one down in the caves, it's the one back home. Interestingly, you can do the same thing, but in reverse, essentially summoning items to you. It'd be a big project, but you could send a request of what you want through the portal, and it'd bring the item back to you. You could have remote access to your entire storage room. Now, you may be thinking, yeah, but I have an ender chest and shulker boxes, it's not going to be a problem. Ender chests are great, but there's something they can't store. Mobs, or pretty much any entity that isn't an item. This idea essentially lets you bottle, store, transfer, and summon mobs and entities remotely. So let's say you're hunting for zombie villagers to repopulate a village. You can do the same thing, knock the mob into a portal and have it sent directly back to your base. No more manual luring. You could even beam over experience orbs if you're running short on levels. And again, you could do the reverse and summon mobs to you. Maybe you fancy a mushroom stew pick-me-up and like it warm. You're probably going to like this next one. If you're a security-minded person and enjoy your privacy, or maybe if you just like your pranks, stopping people from using portals is quite a handy trick to have up your sleeve. With Interdimensional Redstone, you can create a portal jammer. This device can detect, inhibit, and outright block portal use in a given area. How does it work? So TNT, annoyingly, can't travel through portals. Fortunately though, TNT carts can. If you send an ignited cart through a portal, when it goes off, the portal will be shattered. If you booby trap a portal from the nether side, you could effectively stop people from using portals in an area. But there's a bit of a snag. Unlike everything I've shown you thus far, a player creating a portal does not trigger chunks to load. That requires an entity to pass through beforehand. In other words, if someone builds a portal, that in itself can't trigger redstone or traps in the nether. So what can we do? Well, we create a dead switch. Here's how it works. We have two portals which are abysmally aligned. Their coordinates are way off and only just close enough to connect. These two portals are going to create an infinite feedback loop, essentially loading one another until the end of time. We also have a TNT cart on tenterhooks, ready to strike, but the cart is prevented from activating by this feedback loop. It expects a pulse every few seconds, and this keeps it at bay. When someone creates an unauthorized portal, what happens? Well, because the synced portals are so terribly mismatched, the nether portal will happily switch to any other portal that's even a bit more suitable, i.e. the new portal. This severs the feedback loop, and the item being continuously shot back and forth will emerge from the unauthorized portal. With no trigger, the dead switch fails, the cart is ignited and thrown triumphantly through the portal. It locks in on the bad player's position, shatters their prohibited gateway, and hopefully takes them out if we're lucky too. This can jam any portal anywhere so long as it falls within the zone, a great addition to your base. We now arrive at my favourite feature. Above all else, Interdimensional Redstone is really good for moving stuff around. Normally, if you want to mobilise something like a mob or an item between point A and B, you need to build infrastructure between the two, so water streams, hopper chains, minecart tracks, piston, conveyor belts, etc. These are bulky, slow, and complicated. I'm a big fan of map making, and I love when you can create impressive spectacles in survival mode, because that's how people play Minecraft, and it's where the real challenge is. This next thing I'm going to show you is, I think, quite an impressive capability for something in survival mode. You can use portals kind of like valves. Here we have a bunch of stuff flowing out, but by disabling or enabling different portals, we can change the outcome of where it actually ends up. The way I'm going to demonstrate this is with a dungeon crawler. Allow me to explain. In a dungeon crawler, you'll adventure through a twisting maze, finding progressively better loot and fighting progressively harder foes. But let's think about this. How would that actually work? Say your dungeon is free roam and has 100 different rooms. If you wanted to create a loot and enemy spawning system, how would you mobilize them? How would you be able to deliver those to the player when the player's skill and location are unpredictable? You could store a copy of every possible enemy and prize for each and every room, completely unfeasible, or you could have a central system that funnels the items and mobs to where they need to go. That'd be very slow, and you'd be waiting minutes and minutes every time something needs to spawn. Not very practical at all. But as I'm sure you've noticed, Interdimensional Redstone would create a much more efficient solution. The loot and enemies can be stored in a central nether location and can be distributed quickly to absolutely anywhere in the map, without much wait time at all. You wouldn't need any complicated pipes or hopper chains, just a simple way to turn portals on and off as need be. This is just one example, but I find the ability to do stuff like this really interesting. Overall, this whole interdimensional redstone business has a bunch of potential, and I certainly hope I've gotten across why I think that is. Just some really cool mechanics going on. But that's it. That's all I have to show you today. I really do hope you enjoyed and hopefully learned something new. Thank you once again for watching, guys. I've been your one and only Simply Suck, and I'll catch you in the next one.